In this video, I'm going to talk about Fortnite currently at Season 8, and I'll be using Apex Legends a lot as reference. I will also be talking about their differences and uniqueness. The motivation behind this video is the fact that I've been trying to get some friends to play Fortnite, and it seems like they felt that is too much for them. So basically, they don't think that going through that learning curve is worth the fun that they'll be receiving. Today, I'll like to share my truth about the game and why I say the things that I would say. First off, I wanted to make a review of Fortnite for a while ever since I started the new free-to-play review series, but Fortnite was already in Season 7, so it seems to be kinda old already, thus I didn't get into making one, but I feel like this could be a good opportunity to do so. Apex Legends is new and I already have a video about it. If you want to check it out, I'll put the link down in the description. But Fortnite is ever changing with constant updates. I can't say I like all the updates. There are some better than others. But I guess with every major update and changes, it does make the game a little less stale. One of the main unique aspects of Fortnite is, of course, the building. You're allowed to build 4 different structure parts, namely a wall, floor, ramp, and a cone roof. They can all be built with 3 different materials such as wood, brick, and metal. And they can all be edited to further give more options in your design and gameplay. For example, you can edit a window to shoot through or create an opening to move across. In traditional shooter games, you use your environment to take cover and get angle advantages over other players. In Fortnite, you create your environment. Whether or not you have a better cover or angle depends on your creation and your ability to do so. Therefore, it is not just running around pointing and shooting anymore. Having faster or more accurate aiming is no longer the main factor in winning anymore. In Fortnite, it also depends on who is the better builder. Since we are creating our own environment, it also challenges how well we adapt to change, since the environment is changing depending on your builds and your reaction towards the enemy's building as well. For example, if you see someone in a distance that also notices you, building up to get better elevation is recommended, as shooting from higher ground increase your chances of getting a headshot, and not only do you have a better view of your opponent, but you also have the advantage to control your peeking on an enemy, especially if that person is not taking cover. What this means is that you can shoot him whenever you feel like it, and your enemy will not know when it will happen. If the enemy gets too close, or if he is at the other side of a ramp, you can even go for a trap kill by boxing him up and place down your traps. Another example is, let's say you do not have high ground and you are very close to your enemy, and at this point you can choose to try to get the high ground from him or try and knock him down, since fall damage is a thing in this game. Now as you build up, your enemies could also build up higher as well, and that is where you need to make another decision depending on many factors. Like, how much materials do you have? Is your opponent a better builder than you? Do you think that you will get third-partied, or could you bring down the structure without him noticing? In my case, since we are in a creative training ground, just the 2 of us, and material wasn't an issue, I decided to keep going and finally took the high ground and won the fight. It is not as simple as just fight or flight anymore. It is just so much deeper with a lot more option in your game. Fortnite also requires a large range of vertical aiming, simply because in 1 second your opponent could be below you and the next he could be above you. So you have to be good with not just the usual left and right x-axis tracking, but also the up and down y-axis as well. In case you did not notice, aiming directly up or directly down is a bit harder, because at some point you'll realize that your reticle can't go any further down, like it doesn't go past where down is and go back the other way. So instead it will just block you and wouldn't allow you to go directly down and pass it. You need to make a small turn with your mouse and move to a different angle to pass that point. I'm sure most of the FPS players understand what I mean. So there is another different challenge in getting used to that as well, for it is very important in Fortnite. At this moment, you might feel like I'm almost pointing out everything bad about Fortnite, because I just seem to make it sound so much more difficult to play. First, we have the building, which introduced so many extra buttons to press during a fight. Then we have to be good at vertical aiming because enemies can go from top to bottom to top again really fast. And unlike usual settings where the environment is not changing, so there are limited moves a player could make and more predictable, but in Fortnite it keeps changing because again you can build. Audio tracking is also just as important as visual tracking because in many build fights you won't be able to see your opponents, and so your ears are the only way to determine where they are. Now it is true that good games does not need to be hard, but that doesn't make Fortnite a bad game. In fact, in my opinion, it's the opposite. We are capable of doing so much more in a game than we think. Just because traditional games are simpler doesn't mean that we could not handle more complicated games. Fortnite has proven that millions of people are capable of building in a fight too, and it all boils down to practice and simply willing to give it a try. I also believe that games like Overwatch, Paladins, and now Apex Legends is better than the traditional FPS games like Counter-Strike simply because they have abilities, which means that players has to strategize more in the game and has slightly more buttons and options to play with. I personally play Apex Legends 2 when it first came out and I like it, but just like how many streamers went over to Apex Legends from Fortnite only to find themselves coming back to Fortnite again, to me that is just because Apex Legends is too simple in comparison. Now don't get me wrong, being simple doesn't mean it is easy. In fact, it being simple to everyone also means that it is hard for everyone. I hope that makes sense. While playing Apex Legends, I can't help but feel that there is so much more that I could be doing. So in a way, we can't display other aspects of our potential besides having good aim. The fear factor is also an interesting way people might rate a game. I have friends saying that compared to CSGO, Fortnite is way scarier because there's just so many ways an enemy can approach you, and not knowing how it's going to play out makes it so much more exciting. When it comes to the graphic side of things, games like Halo, Warframe, Overwatch, or even Apex Legends seem to win for a more sci-fi look. And they look great, but in order to pull that look off, they also need to make sure that the game look and feel realistic, which could also be limiting to what they can allow players to do in the game. Fortnite went for a more cartoonish look, which to some people it could be a more relaxing graphic choice, but what I'm trying to point out here is that they do not have that limitation because they do not need to make everything feel like it is possible in the real world. And they can really do whatever they want, from adding balloons that levitates you to cannons that launches you from one point to another. They could even have zombies, instant fortresses, and just so much more, simply because of their design choice, which makes this game very versatile. Speaking of being flexible, when Apex Legends came out and people were comparing the two battle royales, they instantly realized how useful the ping system was in Apex Legends, and even some popular streamers said that Fortnite would be great with it. The ability to signal enemy locations or items for your allies greatly improves communication with your teammates, and guess what? 2 weeks later, Fortnite made it possible. The fact that they could adapt so quickly and keep up with what's good to improve the game may result in it being the best battle royale for a really long time, because if there is a mechanic out there that makes the genre better, Fortnite can easily learn and implement it to the game. Another great aspect of their choice of style is that it is non-gory. The cartoonish visual makes it kid-friendly, and if a parent were to choose which game they would want their children playing between, let's say, Fortnite and Apex Legends, I would say that it is no competition. Fortnite, although complicated to play and arguably more for young adults, is socially accepted by their parents as a kids game. Now, I have my ass handed to me by a 10-year-old kid before, but the majority of kids that young aren't going to adapt that well, as Fortnite is a very skill and strategy based game. There are a lot of techniques involved. As much as I hate to say it, we all like finding noobs in the game, so Fortnite was especially fun for those that put in the effort. This is also why all the older players love the first few seasons of the game. Now, a lot of people are decent at it, and it's a lot harder to win relative to back then. We also have training grounds, aka playgrounds and creative mode to practice on our skills. So if you are new, do not worry, you could catch up a lot faster than those that were new before. In fact, if you happen to catch me playing, I don't mind bringing you to my own personal training ground and help you get better, but it is not about a day or a week's work. It is probably at least a month before you can get really good. And that also depends on how much time you get to play per day. You literally need to be so used to the buttons that the moment you think of what you want happens without you actively thinking about which button to press. And trust me, it is easier than it sounds. Again, you just need to put in the effort. You might have seen people who played Fortnite for a long time starting to rant about the game or even quit. But I truly believe that if they were good players and you were to ask them do they regret playing Fortnite or if Fortnite is a bad game, you'll probably get very positive replies towards the game. That is because every one of us are subjected to getting bored of any game we play. Getting kills seems normal over time, victory just aren't as rewarding as the first, but the fact that they played it so much to the point that they could get bored of such a complicated game already tells us something about the game and kind of proves my point. To those experiencing game fatigue, just take a break. You will most likely come back to it again if nothing better shows up. By then, the game might feel different and more interesting. With that, I think that is all for this video. There is a reason why so many people like Fortnite. Stop judging it without even trying. Drop a sub or even like the video, see what happens. Have a pleasant day. Bye bye.